Hello everyone, this is D. Chiranjeevi, Assistant Professor, Department of Information Technology, Aditya University. Today I am going to discuss categories of user-defined functions. So at the end of this lecture, learning outcome is student will be able to understand various categories of user-defined functions. So in this lecture, I will discuss the categories of functions, that is function without argument and no return value, first one, and second is function without argument and return value, and third one is function with argument no return value, and the fourth one is function with argument and return value. So these are the four categories I will discuss. So the first one is function without argument and no return value. What does it mean? It means there is no data transfer between calling function and called function. Okay, in this type of user defined function, we will not pass any argument and function also will not return any value. Okay, now let's understand this with an example. Here in this function, I have declared data type of the function as void. What does it mean? It means no return type. Okay, void is no return type, and then add is the function name. So this is the function declaration. This is function declaration, and I have declared a function add that is no return type, that is void data type, and then in main function, this is function calling. So in the main function, we are calling add. So this add is the called function. Okay. So now whenever the control will reach, when execution start from main will reach this function calling, from this line control will go back to definition of the add function. Okay. Now in add function, it got a value, it got b value, that is 10, 5. Then it performed addition. So c equal to a plus b, so c value you got 15, and then you printed the c value here. Now this function, as we are not passing any arguments, now you see in the declaration after function name add, we have not passed any arguments. That's why we will say this function add doesn't have any arguments, function without argument. So we can say, okay. So in definition also you see we have not passed any arguments. Okay. So this function is not returning any value, so we will display the c value here only. So simply I have printed the c value here, so it will print c value 15. After printing the c value, it encounter curly brace, so the add function execution is done. So after done this execution, now from here control again go back to from where it was called. So from here you called, so this line already it performed its job, so now control will come to next line return 0, it means main function execution is also over. So then it will terminate. Okay. So here in this program, add function find a total value of sum of two variables and displayed the result on the screen, and we have not passed any arguments to the function and it not returned any value. This function add not returned any value, only we displayed the value by using printf. Okay. So this is the first one, that is function without argument and no return value. Okay. Now second one is, now let's understand function is without argument and return value. Now this time also we will not pass any arguments to the function, but function will return value. Okay. Now what does it mean? It means when function has no argument, it doesn't receive any data from the calling function. Okay. So when function returns a value, the calling function receives the data from calling function, called function actually. Okay. Now let's understand this with an example for multiplication of two numbers. So here the first of all I have declared a function, the type is return type. Okay. So because the function is of return type, so I specified return type data type, that is int. Then multiplication is the function name and without argument, so I have not passed any arguments inside the parenthesis. It means if the parentheses are empty, it means without any argument. Then function execution will start from main function. This line you are calling a function, that is multiplication. When you call a function, now what will happen? Control from this line will directly go to multiplication function definition. In definition, you have got two values from the user, a value and b value, so that is 5 and 10, and after that multiplication is performed, c equal to a into b. Then here you are not printing c because function is returning, so this multiplication function is returning the multiplication value which is stored in c, so you have written return c. Now whom it will return this C value? So this C value will be returned back to from where you called the function. So you call this function multiplication from here in the from the main function. So control will go back to this function again here. The C value will go back here. So because C is holding a value, so that you cannot print simply by using the function name. Okay, so you need to store. So that's why I declared another variable result and I stored in the result. So C value 10 into 5, 50 will be stored in the result variable. Then I printed the result variable. Okay, so it will print, then when it return 0. Okay, then main function execution over by the time it is printing the result 50. Okay, so here you need to understand one thing. When a function encountered with either return statement or curly bracket, whichever it encounters first, it means the program execution is over. Okay, so in this function what we did, multiplication function take two input from the user and it done multiplication, then it is returning the value. Okay, but we have not passed any argument, but still we have returned a value. It means multiplication function returned a value, but we have not passed any arguments to the multiplication function. Third category is function with argument and no return value. Now what does it mean? Now because no return value, so the function type is void. So that's why function type is void. Now what does it mean, function with argument and no return type? It means the actually arguments in the function calling must correspond to formal argument. Okay, so in this program we will pass argument to the function, but it will not return any values. Okay, now let's understand. So void is no return type and sub is the function name, and I have passed the arguments. How many arguments I have passed? Int comma int. It means every argument separated with comma. So it means 2 arguments I have passed. Now if I am passing 2 arguments, it means these 2 values must be given by the main function. So in main function must have 2 values, then only it will give to subtraction function. So in main function I declared 2 variables a and b, then I read 2 variable values by using scanf, then I called the function. So program execution will it comes like this. When it reached this function, then this a value will be passed to int a here in the definition and b value will be passed to int b here. Okay, now here in this, when the function called, control will go back to from this line, will come to definition of this. Now c equal to a minus will be performed, subtraction will be performed. So a value user given here 10, b value user given 5. So subtraction will be done and 5 will be stored in c. Now here this function is no return type, so you can display the c value here. So in printf I have displayed the c value here. Okay, so that's why output is the difference is 5. So what happened in this program? Simply we have called the sub function, okay, which is taking values from the user, and then it find out the difference when function was called, okay, and displayed on the screen. Arguments we have passed to, and still we have not returned any value. So this subtraction function not returned. Okay, so that's why it doesn't return any value. Simply we have displayed the c value here. Okay, the difference between return type and no return type is, if it is return type, we will not print here. We will simply write return c. That will be displayed in the calling function. And the last category is function with argument. We will pass the arguments and function will return also. Okay, what does it mean? It means the function has argument. It means it is receiving the information or data from the calling function. After taking some desired action, then value will be returned again back to the calling function. Okay, now let's understand. So function is of type return type. So the data type I have specified, that is return type int. Function name division, I have passed 2 values. So 2 parameters, int comma int. So function with argument, so I have passed 2 arguments, int comma int. Now program execution will start from main function. So because 2 arguments I have passed, so I need to give those 2 arguments to those division function from main function only. Okay, so I have read 2 values a and b, and after that I am calling the function a comma b. So a value user given 10, b value 5. So this a value 10 will go to division function definition and b value will goes to division function b. So when it reached this line, control will go to definition, Now you are performing C equal to A by B. So A value 10, B value 5. So 10 by 5 will be performed. C value you will get 2. But here function is of return type. So that's why you need to write return C. Now when you write return C, what will happen? When the execution encountered with this return statement, immediately again control will be transferred to from where it was called. So you call this function from here, this line. Okay. So now the value C is 2. So 2 will be stored in the result variable. Okay. A comma B value you will get 2. That is return C value. So result 2. So you are printing result in the next line. So it will print the result is 2. Okay. So in the above program, division function takes input from the user and then it performs the division and returns the value for called function, and passed calling function argument. We have passed arguments to the calling function and it returns the value. So in this lecture I have discussed function without argument and return value. I have discussed function without argument and return value, and function with argument and no return value, and function with argument and return value. So these are the 4 categories I have discussed in this lecture. Thank you.